Hi everyone, welcome to this tutorial on how to create modules in different folders when using the nWidart Laravel module library. As you can see on this screen, this Stack Overflow question has been here for more than 4 years, and this problem has persisted with this library for a very long time. Unfortunately, there have never been a straightforward solution on how to solve this problem. So essentially what I'm going to show you in this very short tutorial is a perfect and complete workaround on how to use this folder and create multiple modules in different folders perfectly while using the nWidart module. Okay, now the problem we have with this library, I'm going to show you an example of what I'm actually trying to achieve right now. So if you look at my screen right now, you will see I'm actually working on a CMS, a content management system. I'm building a content management system for a project I'm working on. And so in the content management system, I want to put all my core modules in a module called core in a core folder. Okay, so this is the parent folder and this is the core module folder, and these are the modules where I want to put inside this core module. And then I also want to have a plugin folder where I will put all the feature modules. The reason why I designed this system like this is so that I can completely separate consign within this system between the core modules and the feature modules. The core modules are stuff that will be critical or very important for the system to continue functioning, while the feature modules will be something that will be, you know, an extra feature that will extend the functionalities of the content management system. But when you're actually using this library, when you're using this library, unfortunately you will not be able to create, or there is no straightforward solution that allows you to create modules into different folder. So what I'm trying to say is that if you use this library, the command will only allow you to create modules either inside the core folder or inside the feature folder, depending on the path that you set in your configuration file. Alright, so what I'm going to show you in this tutorial is simple, and that is how to actually add modules inside this particular stuff. Now there are a few things I've tried before now. One of the few things I've tried is that I've tried to work with Trad AI. I've tried to work with Trad AI to see if I can also develop my own module management system. And I've actually done that, but the challenge I have is that while creating my own module service manager, it was very much difficult to actually, allow the system to reach the modules, what is it called? The module service provider. Okay. So as you understand, the way this system works is that the way the way this package library work is that they merge all the configuration files of all the modules in your system into the application file of Laravel, so that whenever the module is loading or whenever the application is an instantiation, it will actually load all the configuration files at once. So the biggest problem you will have when you're creating configuration or when you're creating modules in different folder is that if you create a module in a folder that is not being seen, or whose configuration file is not seen or is not properly matched with the application, Laravel application, then that module will throw an error whenever you're loading it. That is why if you go to this Stack Overflow question that is being asked here, and you will see that this person mentioned that he only gets errors. I started with clients, and you can see if you read down here anyway, you see that the person only got some errors, like service provider not found. That was because these applications or these modules were created in such a way that the application service provider or the module service provider couldn't be merged properly into the application. So what is the way to do this? The first way to do this is to properly, set up the configuration settings of the nWidart Laravel module system. So let me just open my code and show you what I mean by that. Now if you look at my project right here, okay, I'm going to close all of the application. So this is where my modules is going to stay, and I've named this platform. And inside this platform right now, I have something called the core. Like I mentioned previously, this is where my core modules are going to stay. And plugin, this is where my plugin modules are going to stay, right? So whenever you install the nWidart Laravel module, which I assume you've already done, it's going to create a configuration folder called modules.php for you. Okay, so inside this modules.php, this is where you can customize almost everything that relates to how the systems actually create modules and all the stuff. Now there are a few places I want you to pay attention to. Okay, so let's just scroll down from the top to the bottom so that you see how you configure all of these things. So once you've installed that package, if you come down right here, you will see something called paths. Okay, this part is very, very important. And then it has a module path. So this is a key, and this modules key tries to point directly to where you want your modules to be installed whenever you use the PHP artisan make module command. So any part you set here is where your module is going to be stored. Okay, you can see this part is used to save the generated module. This part will also be added automatically to the list of scanned folder. All right, so the first thing you need to do is to set where your modules need to be stored. And you can see I tried to set two. I tried to turn this to an array and set two part, but it didn't work successfully. So what I did was to set the first part where I want my modules to be stored, and then I scroll down. So if you go downward, you should see another key called scan. So when you go to this, if you go downward, you see auto discovery, migration is true. So that is not important in our context. And then if you go down, you should see scan. Okay. Now this scan is very, very important. So what this scan does is that it traces Laravel where it should look for modules in your system. So by default, when I installed this library, the enabled was false and the path was just set to vendor. Okay, so I simply uncomment this at and then set the enable to true. What it means is that this enable to true means that this scan folder, this scan should be active, and then the paths I set it to the two paths where I want all my modules to be stored. So I have platform core, and then every folder there is a module. That is why I use the asterisk, and then platform plugin, every folder there is a module depending on based on how I actually created my module structure, like I pointed that around here. So if you have like three folders where you want your modules to be stored, for example, if I have something like let's say base platform featured, so yeah, I want to store my featured modules, so I'm going to add it in this particular place. So what it does is that what it does at this particular point is that whenever this application is instantiating, the nWidart module system will scan for all your modules using the path that you've instantiated in this particular place. Okay, so once you've done that, the next thing you need to do is to go to the config composer.json file in the root of your project. So this is the composer.json file. Okay, so just go to that page and open it. Now what you want to look for firstly is to look for the autoload key. So if you scroll down, you see this particular place, which is the autoload key. Now this by default you should see this particular variables here, and you should also see these two variables. Now what you need to do is to also add the paths to your modules. Okay, if you look at this particular place now, when you're creating a Laravel application or a Laravel installation by default, every Laravel installation by default comes with an app. Okay, so that application is where all your configuration file, your systems, everything will be stored. Okay, that is why you have in this place by default you see this variable with a capital letter which points to the application that comes with your Laravel installation, which is this particular guy in here. Okay, so the next thing it needs to store is also the folder that holds the rest of your application. As you know, every module works like simply like an application, right? Because it has its own controller, its repository, it views services and every other stuff. So we have to point to where our applications are going to be. So because in my system I have two directories here where I want my application, my module application to be stored, I add the first one, which is core, and then I pointed it to platform.core. So it's platform.core right now. And then the next one is the plugins, where all my plugin features modules are also going to store. And then I pointed it to this platform.plugin. So it will simply come to this place and read every modules that are there. For example, I have base here. I have all of these things right here. Okay, and then I have plugins here and I have block right here. You can add as many folders as you want. Just make sure that they are actually in this particular place and the other place I've mentioned. Now the last thing you need to do is to simply scroll down right here When you scroll down, you should see this extra. So okay, so yeah, you should see this extra. Yeah, now inside this extra, by default you should see this particular line of code right here. Maybe this will not be available, so you can just copy this and paste. So this is mesh plugins, and then inside this mesh plugin you have to include these services that are here, or the link to your composer.json. Now composer.json comes with every module installation, and they are really important to read the characteristics of that particular module. I'm going to show you example of this composer.json. So inside this place you need to put directory or the link or the path to where all your composer.json for your modules will be found. So what this guy is saying is that for when it goes to platforms and go to core, everything in that place should have a composer JSON. So you should look for everything that has composer JSON. And then the same thing if you goes to plugin, every modules there. This is what this asterisk stands for, like everything right there. And you should also look to this composer JSON. And then make sure you set recurse to true. Now this will make sure that it reads through everything to the end. Okay, set replace to false, and then set mesh def to false. Okay, once you're done with all of this place, you save it. Now as a standard, whenever you change anything in composer JSON, the next thing you need to do is to run composer update. Okay, so just come to your plan and run composer update on your terminal. I'm not going to do this because I've already done that. So it will save all of these things and update your composer for you. This is a very critical operation, that or important operation that you must remember to do. Okay, so run composer update. Now once you're done with that, you can now start installing application to the directory you want. So by default, like I pointed out to you, the path is actually set to, let's go back to our module.php. If you've forgotten, the module.php is inside this config folder. And now the config folder is the one that comes with that Laravel installation. So you should see that there. So let's go back to our paths that I showed you previously. Okay, so let me just search this very fast. So paths. So as you can see, our path here is actually currently set to platform.core, right? So if I come here, and say, let's create an application or a module. So I'll say PHP artisan make module. So make module. So let's say I want to create an auth module that will handle all my authentication. So if I enter this, let's see what will happen. Okay, that is incorrect command, I believe. So I think the command is not very good. So let's say PHP artisan module make. So that is the correct one, I believe. So auth. So I want to create auth module right now. So you should create an auth module for me. So as you can see, it has successfully created an auth module for me. Now if I go to my module directly, this auth module will be created inside my core, right? So it will be created inside my core right now. Now this is going to work because this path is actually set to this particular core. So by default, whenever it's scanning, remember the scan part that I showed you, and it sees this particular auth module, is going to merge the base directly successfully for me. Okay, so now if I want to also install a module inside this plugin, I can simply just change this place to plugin. So I'll change this particular guy to plugins. So let's now create our application inside the new module. So remember, we set our module generation path now to the plugins. So I'm simply going to say PHP artisan module make, and this time I want to create a module called renter. So I'm going to do this and enter, and then it should successfully create our module for us. Now remember that our path is set to plugin, so if it is correct, we are going to see our module inside the plugin folder. So I'm going to go to my platform, plugins, and then as you can see, the module is actually in that particular place. Now for us to be sure that everything is working correctly, we need to make sure that our modules are loading as it should. Okay, so I'm going to load one of these modules part and see if it's actually working. So I'm going to go to route here. By default, this nWidart Laravel module library creates a path for you. Okay, so I'm going to open the web part here and I'm going to see this route. So I'm going to copy this route out. The reason why I'm doing this is because I've not yet worked on my middleware, so I'm just going to comment this out rather, and then I will paste the directory here or the route here and save it. Okay, so by default, whenever I go to this renter, if our Moodle is working correctly, it should be able to open up. Okay, so I'm also going to do the same for the auth, which is also in our core directory. So I'm going to go here and open the route and then open this up. Okay, this is already done. I've already done this. Okay, so if I go to this out, then it should also point to that same directory. So I'm going to save this now. So the next thing is to start our application. So I'm going to say php artisan serve for our application to start running. So once our application starts running, I'm going to open up my browser and see what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to open up my browser. So this is something I've already done right now. So if you look at this place, the route is actually in renter. So I'm just going to remove this now so that I can start and you'll see. So I'll open up our application, and this is the home page of the application from Laravel installation. So inside here I'm going to say renter, which is the route I've already shown you. So if I enter this, it should open successfully for us. Now if I also go to routes and enter routes, it should open successfully for us also. You can see now the module is in auth, which is correct route that we wanted to see. All right. So now by doing this, we've been able to solve this challenge that this person was asking. Now the challenge this person was asking was that this person failed to actually added some of these settings that I just showed you inside this particular directory. So if you don't do that and you end up creating the Moodle in any directory that is not being scanned, then the Moodle service provider will not be successfully loaded in the application. Okay, so what is happening currently with our configuration is that whenever this application goes to whenever this application wants to look for a Moodle, so it will first of all go to this configuration that I showed here, to go to this configuration inside this Moodle, and then it will search for files that are inside the scan part. So if assuming we only have this at this particular place, so whenever this application is looking or whenever the library is looking for modules, it is only going to search for the modules inside this core folder. It's not going to bother to search inside the plugin folder. So but because we have two of this, it's going to definitely search inside these two folders. Okay, now one last thing I want to show you, and this is very important, is that whenever a module is created, it comes with something called composer.json, and this is really important. So if you open any of this module, you should see a composer.json, a module.json that comes with it. Now this module.json have something called priority, and this priority determines in the order in which your modules are loaded when your application is instantiated. So what that means is that the higher your priority, then determines if that module should be load first or second. So in my own system design right here, you can see that I would prefer all my core auth because they determine the core functionality of the application to load first. So what I can do in this instance is that I'm going to set all of these things to 0, okay? So that whenever my application is loading, it will load all of these modules inside this particular place first. But then every other application that does not really determine how the application works, I can set it to um, priority like 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so as you're adding application inside or you're adding modules, you need to determine which module should load before which module, and then determine that and then that will determine how you set your priority. Another thing you can also do is to add something called a key here called dependency, so that whenever your application is loading, you use that dependency to see which module depends on which module to load, so that you now load that module first before you load that particular module that depends on that particular one. I hope you get the logic I'm trying to explain. So that is everything you need to know about this tutorial. I hope it was beneficial for you. If you actually learned one or two things from this tutorial, consider subscribing to this YouTube channel or give me a thumbs up so that I can create more videos like this for you. Thank you very much and see you in the next one.